All right, Caitlin, I kind of was a little bit, I don't want to say starstruck.
Mm.
I don't really get that way, but um, really glad that we just got to speak with Alberto Carvalho. You can call him doctor, you can call him sir, because he's been knighted in
Sure
two
has.
countries, Spain and Portugal. That's bananas. You can call him professor, but you should definitely call him the superintendent of LA Unified. I thought he gave, frankly, it's like a master class on urban superintendency.
Yeah.
It was just pretty tremendous. Lots of great takeaways. Why don't you start with something that really stood out to you?
Well, urban superintendency, a masterclass on that. I thought a masterclass on leadership in the education
Yeah.
space. I'd also take that from him. I thought so much of what he shared was realistic,
Hmm.
and also, so it was realistic, it was practical, and it was encouraging.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, I mean, he didn't shy away from the challenges, and more than that, he identified ways that he felt like he had been successful and that other people could also be successful. I think one of the ways that was most interesting, and he phrased it perfectly because I loved the alliteration, data driven versus data informed. He mentioned he was skeptical of people who are data driven.
Yeah. Yeah. Which kind
Only
of threw
focus
me at
on the
first when he
data.
said that. I was like, what? Who's on
Right.
data driven? Yeah.
Same. And then I was thinking, there's no way he's going to denounce the importance of data.
Right.
And of course, he did not.
Correct.
He found that a better term to articulate how he makes decisions and leads is to be data informed, which I feel was the most realistic component of his conversation, because what he was saying is that you cannot make all decisions based on data alone.
Yep.
There's context to every decision. There's context to every availability where you get data,
Yeah.
every opportunity where you acquire data.
Yeah.
And the context is crucial in order to understand it. And then in order to apply it to a decision that's going to be beneficial for people, you need to include the context in which the data came, from which the data came.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so this idea of being data driven versus data informed, I plan to consider that and sort of adopt that myself,
Mm-hmm.
where you pay attention to the data and you let it inform and teach you,
Mm-hmm.
but you do not let it direct you entirely.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminded me a little bit of a conversation we had with Mike McShane, and hopefully folks remember that conversation, or you can go back and listen to it. But Dr. Mike McShane talked some about AI, and he was talking about like large language models and like where's the space for humans. And he was saying that he thought, no, humans are still going to have a space.
Yeah.
Right. Humans still have a major role. And he was talking about it more in the context of like thinking about what is the good life.
Mm-hmm.
And LLM is never going to be able to tell us that. Right.
Right.
We're going to have to consider that as humans. In the same way, I think Carvalho was talking about, let's not just be data driven, but yeah, data informed. A human is going to have to like exercise sound judgment based on context, based on things
Their
you see, and based on humanity, and make some good decisions.
Yeah.
So I really like that. To me, there was a kind of a synthesis there.
Yeah, I thought, and your discussion about humanness and humanity, importance of it, reminded me of how he talked about including parents in the conversation.
Oh yeah,
And
let's talk about that for sure.
The idea of, to connect the dots and bring you along on my thought process, humanity, humanness, people's ability to include context in their decision making. You can't make a decision about a child's education without including their parents, was where my mind went to, which then connected us to why it seems as if he would feel that same way, because not only does he encourage parents to participate in their education and share their opinions, I think he even used the words fiery. He wanted them to be charged with so much information. I actually also think he used the word dangerous information, because he wants parents to be so informed that they are then able to approach the school, the district, the system, the educational institution, and share their thoughts, share their concerns, express their wants, their needs.
It's a heck of a thing that he was expressing. He's inviting accountability, right? And I don't mean in the way that it accountability in the way it normally gets or often gets thrown around, the sort of academic accountability. He's sort of saying, one of the ways that we're gonna get better is for us, the school district, to tell parents the current state of things, like warts and all. And they're going to have that information. He called it demand-driven reform. And at first when he said demand-driven reform, I thought he meant the way we typically think of like supply and demand, and have a great product and people are going to want it. That's demand. He sort of said strengthen people's ability to make demands. That I really think is a major shift in how probably a lot of school leaders, a lot of teachers, and certainly administrators think about things, like strengthening their ability to make demands. Usually I want fewer demands made of me.
Yeah.
Right?
If you're a parent or an educator or anybody related to a school system right now listening to this, I want to know how you feel about that specific call to action.
Right.
Are you wanting all school systems to adopt this notion and this charge to parents to get involved and to have all the information necessary to share their opinions?
Yeah.
Or do you feel that there's a different way to more appropriately include parents in the conversation? Do you feel that there's the idea of dangerous information that's in fact true, that parents, they don't need to have all of that information, because there's an element where the experts, the educators, those in the schools, should be the ones that have only certain information.
Right.
I want to know, whoever's listening to this podcast, and I shouldn't even limit it to parents or educators, what's your thought? What type of world do you see coming from this specific situation?
Yeah. Well, based on, Carvalho's experience, I would say it's had meaningful, impact, like meaningful positive impact.
Absolutely.
In Miami-Dade. Obviously now he's in LA, so we'll see. He's only been there, I think, for about a year and a half. Not quite, maybe 2 years at this point. So we'll see what impacts it has, but I think that has been a powerful lever, right? To pull on that and to say, hey, parents, we're gonna equip you with information. So that's key. Let's give you some meaningful information. Though, and maybe this is the next thing we can talk about if you're okay with it, but we're not just giving you information about things that are useless. Meaning, he said, hey, we have 4 points in our strategic plan. That's it. That will stun a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? It's 500,000 people or children in his district. I believe, based on some of our other guests and earlier guests, remember we spoke with Chad R.
Yeah.
I think there are more kids in LA Unified than people in the state of Wyoming.
Oh, we should definitely look
I think
into
that's
that.
right.
I think that sounds, yep.
I think that's right. And Carvalho has 4 points in his strategic plan. That says something. I know you were talking in another episode about focus. How's that for focus?
Yeah. And then you see the data that followed and the success stories that followed when you eliminated the 150-page strategic plan,
right, and
focused instead on those 4 elements. He also spoke about, in addition to those 4 elements, he spoke about 3 ways to create successful change.
Yeah.
3 ways to create an environment that fosters innovation and achievement.
Yeah.
I know that the last one was will.
Oh yeah,
the middle one was skill.
Yeah, belief, skill, and will.
Belief, skill, and will.
Yeah.
So this idea, you have to find people that believe.
Yep.
You have to find people who are skilled enough, who are experienced enough to affect the change and create the change. And then the last one, the one he said, you can find people that believe in your mission. You can find people that are skilled enough to bring it to life. But can you find people who have the will to stick it out and to stick through the combativeness that inherently is going to come from somebody in the 500,000?
Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Which of those do you think is the hardest to find? I mean, maybe it's equal. Maybe they're in equal doses. Among kind of the like if you were to survey people, but like in the education space, what do you think's the challenge? Belief, skill, or will?
I am going to agree with him. I think that it's going to be will.
Will?
And you know what's interesting though? I think that people people would acknowledge pretty much up front, I have this belief. I believe in what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
And here's my resume. And that will indicate to you my skill sets
Yep.
that allow me or give me the credibility to prove to you that I'm skilled in this
Yep.
way.
Yeah. Okay.
But how are you going to prove to someone that you have the will power or that you have the commitment, the tenacity to stick with someone through what it is that they're doing? My first thought would be your resume probably could attest to that a little bit if you've been in a educational environment that's challenging and you've been there for a long time. But then I thought maybe that's actually not accurate, because there are plenty of people who have stuck it out in educational environments that have been in them, but their will has not sustained.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I don't know that there's a right answer to this question, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's more of a thought exercise. What came to mind for me, I mean, you make a compelling case for will being the thing that's missing, and I mean, I can think of people that I've encountered,
Sure.
that I've met, where the belief was there. I will say, in education, I think the belief is mostly there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because at some
mostly.
point you're gonna be hard pressed to find someone who doesn't believe in a good education for all students.
Yeah, though I do think that, I mean, we've talked some about high and low expectations, and so that, to the extent
Okay,
that that's like
interesting. If
that's
we're
an
gonna get more
element of
granular.
belief,
Yeah,
right? Is, do I
absolutely.
really think that all kids can succeed
Yeah.
in these ways? I don't.
I for sure
Right?
think you're gonna get into some
Yeah,
tushy.
yeah. There's a gap. There's some gaps here.
Mhm.
I was gonna say though, I think that often, unfortunately, there are some major skill gaps, and
Okay.
mostly I'm thinking about energetic new teachers.
Okay.
New teachers, and you know, we're in this era of reading, science of reading. I don't know. Some people get mad when you call it the reading wars. I don't know what else to call it, but we're kind of still in this space where a lot of parents, I'm among them, where it dawned on us that, oh, our kids were not being taught how to read in ways that are effective, right? We're not data informed,
Right.
etc.
Right.
No best practices, etc. I think that many of those teachers really do believe in the kids.
For sure.
I think that they have the will to do what it takes, but I think that their training was really poor.
Okay.
Right, and that they were trained sometimes in these methods that are just not effective. So like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much they believe and how much they try. It's sort of like imperfect practice. If you're just practicing, if your practice is imperfect,
Right.
you're never going to get perfect at that thing.
Right.
You need to have some perfect practices as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I think they all three sort of feed into each other.
For sure.
If you aren't skilled and you don't have the skills, or you didn't have the opportunity to be trained in a way that was going to set you up to be successful, even your belief is going to dwindle, or it's going to be questioned.
Yep.
But certainly your will is going to be diminished.
Yeah.
That fire won't be able to sustain itself or burn.
Yeah. Okay, I want to ask you one more question. You know, you've talked to a lot of folks in the education space, and you know, teachers, administrators, etc. I mean, what do you think about his approach to options, and like options beyond just the conventional school system, sort of zone school system? I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard, certainly not a superintendent, brag about how many kids are not going to their zone school.
Yeah, didn't you think that was interesting?
That's
his acknowledgement.
really refreshing. I mean, he's at 3 out of 4. It's like 75% or something like that.
Yeah.
Not going to their zone in Miami-Dade.
I know. And yet what he took from that are all of these new ways to create different opportunities
Yeah.
in his own school system
Yep.
to meet the needs, different supplemental opportunities, different supplemental forms of instruction to meet the needs of all the students who are still coming, of which there are, I think he said 300 something thousand.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that question relates to so many of the conversations we've had at the Emerging School Models conference, because it relates to this notion of the free market, that idea of competition,
Mm-hmm.
not competing necessarily with one another,
Not
but
zero sum.
not
Yeah.
zero sum,
Yeah.
but in fact, everybody's competing with themselves to better their practices
Right.
and create these desired outcomes. With Mike McShane and hearing about the idea of everybody has the choice, you're making your own argument in how you chose to make the choice. And so I love the idea of options, of course. And I think that in the long run, and if done well, and if approached, with enthusiasm, only makes everybody better.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, and anyone who watched part 1 of this episode, if you haven't, go back and watch it. But when you see Superintendent Carvalho, you'll see he is not rattled by that competition, right?
Yeah.
He's not threatened by it. He's sort of like,
No.
yeah, let's welcome
It's wonderful.
this and see if we can all get better together.
Yeah.
He's definitely no shrinking violet. So it was very cool to speak with him. I would love for folks who are listening to this to maybe comment on, on that last piece, like what keeps, whether it's superintendents or whomever, what keeps people from embracing that type of competition?
Yeah.
In your experience, what keeps folks from saying, all right, there are some other ways of doing this, bring it on, let's see what happens, right?
Totally.
Because there is a recalcitrance
Yeah.
that exists in the status quo, and I'd love to know where people think that originates.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I mean, where outside of the world of education, what stops you from looking at someone else doing something different and having success, from wanting to learn from them instead of wanting to take away their success?
Yep.
or dismantle their credibility?
Yeah, that's a great question. We'll leave it there. Good to catch up.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaka.
All right, thanks, Caitlin.